What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
I'm Robert Lindsey Milne. I've been a professional psychic for 57 years. I live in Toronto, Canada, and it is the most culturally diverse city in the world. We all proudly say that. And I do psychic readings and a whole bunch of other things too.
So how did you discover, Robert, your psychic awareness, your psychic abilities then?
So I'm going to make a long story really, really short. From a young age, like 4 or 5 years old, I would see things, know things, be aware of things, and I would get in trouble for saying them. I one time said to my mother, Grandma Harris died yesterday. She was my great-grandmother. She was in England. I had only seen her once or twice in my life. My mother got angry and hit me for saying bad things. Next night at dinner, my parents were talking about Grandma Harris dying, and nobody got angry about it. And I remembered knowing that it happened and getting into trouble. So those types of things happened to me a lot. One time at an NHL hockey game, my father took me to, I was about 9. The game went into overtime. I knew that a particular player with Toronto was going to score the winning goal, even the game hadn't started. Anyway, I reacted, and the game started, and the guy that I knew that was going to scored the winning goal. And that's when I knew I was doing things differently or saw things differently than others, and just started honoring or acknowledging what I was doing. And I knew very early what I was going to do in my life. Then actually was when I decided or learned.
So you started giving readings at, I believe it was called the Cozy Tea Room.
That's right. I was 15 and a half. And I was homeless. I was living on the streets in Toronto. It was the wintertime. Now, and I had been surviving on the streets for several months using my intuition and psychic ability to survive. And I heard that if you worked at the Cozy Tea Room doing readings, you would get paid, but also you would get, if you worked in the afternoon, you get a sandwich and a cup of tea and some cookies. And I applied. I had to do a tea leaf reading, never did that before, just looked in the cup and started talking, didn't look at the leaves. Then I had to do a card reading, I'd never done that. I just put the cards on the table, but did psychic readings. And I got hired. And that day I got a sandwich and a cup of tea and got paid at the end of the shift. I had a place to sleep that night. And the next day I had a job and I worked at the Cozy Tea Room till I was about 21.
All right. Now then, I'm guessing that readings in well, giving psychic readings, that there was a sort of legality about giving those, and that's why you was at basically
In
the cozy,
Canada,
yeah,
absolutely.
basically
In
the cozy tea
Canada,
room.
right up until July of 2019, July 1st, 2019, it became legal to do psychic readings and a bunch of other things. There was the Witchcraft Act in Canada, and it was in the criminal code of section 326. And it stated anyone who fraudulently tells fortunes for consideration, uses accuse somebody of a crime using an occult or crafty science, give medical advice using occult or crafty science. I can't remember what the other one was. Anyway, punishable by summary conviction of not more than 1 year in jail and more than $5,000 fine. That was written in about the late 1800s, and it just got struck down in 2019. Same day cannabis got legalized as well, or decriminalized. So being psychic and smoking dope became legalized on the same day.
So you must have had a pretty difficult upbringing then. If you was,
I was beaten, sexually abused, humiliated, crushed. If this would have happened today, my parents would have gone to jail.
right. So a lot of that took place at home then.
Oh, indeed. So what late in now I came to terms with all those people, and late in my mother's life, several years ago, one of my presents to her, I was painting her apartment, and it was the first time in years and years that we'd spent any time together. And I was standing up on the ladder. I was painting in the kitchen, and my mother. I heard my mother speak, and she said to me, Robbie, they called me that. Robbie, I've never asked you, was it really better for you and safer for you to live on the street than at home? And as I was painting, I turned around and I looked at this little old lady at the bottom of the ladder. And that little old lady was not the woman that beat me with a skipping rope or a rubber hose or those types of things. She was a little old lady. And I put my paintbrush down and I got down off the ladder, and I looked at her and I said, Mother, before I answer the question, I have to tell you, I've spent my lifetime in therapy working on that very question. And I just want you to know that I'm okay with what happened. But yes, it was safer for me to be on the street than at home. And she kind of looked at me and she groaned and she walked away. I was very gentle and very kind. I had come to that peace.
So no matter what abilities that you have, or any of us have, we're all. It doesn't take you away from having a human experience, does it? Do you know what I mean? You were still
absolutely
right.
Now it's my contention doing what I do as a human experience, and almost not 100%, but almost all humans can be psychic. So almost all of us can be. It's a natural instinct.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a talent more than a gift, I suppose, and and you can
in
work
my
on
mind,
that.
yes.
Yeah, you can work on that, can't you? To
absolutely
open that that part
absolutely.
of your So, well, yes, because you can be you can have this, but you can it doesn't mean that you're a spiritual person, that you're switched onto the idea that of what spirituality is, in a sense. I mean, I've seen so many mediums and psychics who have this gift who gosh, I mean, what have never looked too much into spirituality, or even the ideas of what the progression of the soul, or what any of this really is.
Well, and in reality, nobody really knows. Okay, so I often, Recently I posted on Facebook a picture, and it was of a woman wearing a white gown, two guys beside her looking at her, and the caption over her head says, "Since I found my spiritual awakening, I have gotten above my ego. Now I'm better than all of you." And I posted that. And I even made a comment on my podcast, and it reminded me of so many holier than thou New Agers. It was just so funny. So we don't know. We don't know. We think we believe something, but just because we believe it doesn't mean it's there. Being psychic and being spiritual are different. A lot of people that do this kind of work tend to lean towards spirituality, meaning being good. And that's what, when people talk about being spiritual, they often think it's being good. It isn't actually just being good. It's also being spiritual. You can also be bad. Anton LaVey, the guy that was the leader of the Church of the Satanic Church of California, he was a spiritual guy, but he worshiped the devil. So just being spiritual doesn't mean it's good or bad. Whatever spiritual is comes from the person.
Yeah, well, I think when I think of spiritual, having a spiritual kind of take on things, is that just knowing that I'm more than my body, and that I've chosen to come here, and
yes.
There are no mistakes, just experiences. That's what I'm like.
Sure. It's easy. Isn't it great being able to say it like that? Because
that's right. And there's others out there who believe that all this is not real anyway, but it's got consequences.
Okay.
There's consequences of it, but it's not what we think it is at all.
That's right.
And maybe we're living in a dream.
And maybe we are. Maybe we are. Who knows? Maybe we'll wake up and who knows? One day we will.
Yes.
Or we won't exist.
Well, okay. So
either way?
No. Okay. So how does it work for you then? You with this ability that you've opened up. So if someone comes to you for a reading, how do you explain where you're getting the information from, or how does the process work for the client?
Well, when I do a reading for someone, it's a monologue, not a dialogue. And I ask people, please don't interrupt me when I'm speaking. So what I do is I have the way I start the reading, and I start each reading the same way. And I say the date, the person's name, and where we are. And then I start off with, just before I start to do your reading, I want to explain to you what I'm going to do. So once I start speaking like that, I'm starting to tune into the person. And what happens is, as I'm starting to tune into the person, I'm not listening to the words I'm saying, I'm just starting to see them. And I see more and more and more as I'm speaking. I often start off talking about the future, and I just do a little bit just to get their attention, just to open their mind a bit. Then I come back and talk about the present, then the past, then back to the present, into the future. And often when I do readings, I'm seeing people's lives from conception to completion. I don't see the acts at either end of the spectrum, mind you, the completion or the conception. What I just see is, or sense, is an energy line in a time period. I go forward and back, and I then and when I ask people, I say, please don't interrupt me, because what I'm saying isn't necessarily what I'm thinking. Sometimes, and when I'm doing a reading, when I'm tuning in, what I'm saying has already been processed. And I'm already thinking about something different, even though I'm speaking about something different than what I'm thinking about. And then, as the reading goes on, not only am I thinking about or saying something that's been processed, what I'm going to say, I'm also thinking about what I've said throughout the session. And then I start thinking about what's going to be happening later on in the reading, all happening at the same time. And a visualization of that is think about there's 4 or 5 TV screens on the wall, and each screen is playing a different show, or different show. And I go back and forth. And sometimes there's another one where I'll be at the same time thinking about what I'm going to be doing later. Now, if something really heavy comes into the session, there's no fancy stuff on the wall. I'm dealing with that person right then and there. Okay. But I'm going back and forth. So if I get interrupted, it's like disconnecting the plug from the internet, and I may not be able to get it back, and it pisses me off. So at the end of the reading, then we have the question period.
Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Then there's the question period. And then there's the question period. And I am very generous with my time. And I'm very generous with my time. And when people have questions, I answer them. I usually what's happened is I've answered their questions as they've been written down, like in order as well, Oh, I know something else. There's something else. I guarantee my work forever. 100% guarantee. And this is what I guarantee, that from the time I do a reading till the ending of my life, or that other person, there's racing cars. From the time I do the reading to the ending of my life or theirs, I guarantee that they will be satisfied with the service that I provide. And for any reason they are not, I'll just give them back their money. But now, if I did a reading for you in 1978, you're not going to be getting 2020's bread today, right? This is not a long-term investment.
Come on, Rob. Come on. Work with me.
Okay, all right. 82's,
I get it.
Not 20.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do it, and I don't like to, but I do. And here's the other thing. There are times when I don't think I'm doing a good reading, and I stop. And I apologize. And sometimes, if I just don't have a sense for the person, I don't do the reading either. No. I only do the absolute best that I can do, and if it isn't the absolute best that I can do, I'm not going to do it. There's no in between on that one, Kevin. Not for me, anyway.
And you've given over 100,000 readings, probably?
I've done more than 100,000 psychic connections. Doing 100,000 readings, like an hour, that'd be a lot of hours over the crystal ball, right?
Yes. Yeah,
So
you've done your 10,000 hours. You've done your 10,000 hours.
I think I had done that, because when I was working at the tea room, I was working there 5 days a week, 6 days a week. And sometimes on Sundays, we used to go out to private parties and do readings. And it was a total commitment it's always been, but it was a total commitment on my part. And there were some days I would see 35, 40 people. Now they would only get 10-minute readings. But some days I'd see 10 or 12. But every day, no matter what, going to work, focusing, doing readings. And on days off, I practiced, and I still do.
So, your website is?
RobertLindseyMilne.com. That's it, RobertLindseyMilne.com. And it tells a lot about what I do, and there's a few shows. I think the first one I was on with you is on my website too, under media. And it talks about what I do and how to get readings from me. And I have always been a one-person show. So I didn't hang out with many psychics. I don't know very many. I wasn't I started early. I was the first performing first Canadian psychic that was performing on radio and TV shows and things like that. And I've never been I have never been really a competitive individual in that I don't compete with you, I compete with me. And I found a lot of psychics were competitive, and I found that there'd been a lot of jealousy, and I just didn't want to be around it. So and I'm happy just doing my thing. And it's only been in the last couple of years that I've started doing a kind of, coming out of my semi-retirement. It's only been in the last couple of years that I'm starting to realize how different I am from many of the psychics that are around, and I'm kind of surprised at it. When I had my this website, I've had many. When I got this website done, I asked a whole bunch of people to write a comment, and they said, well, what do you want me to say? And I said, I just want you to say what you really believe. And when they all filled it out, done that, and they sent it to me, I never looked at one of them. And I sent all of them to the website designer. And I said, the only thing you can change on these testimonials is the font. Don't correct any spelling. Don't edit anything. If somebody uses a capital N when it shouldn't be, leave it. Don't change anything. And it wasn't until my website was up and running that I read them.
How did that hit you?
I cried.
Oh. Well, it just goes to show how affected people were from your readings and how
Yes,
much it helped them.
Yes. And at this time in my life, I've just started to accept what my life and my career has been about.
Wow.
I knew it here. I've just started realizing the impact, and I'm quite humbled by it.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
It is.
And
It is.
having the repeat customers there and having, all these new people that have come to you over the many years and probably come back as well in some respects, just goes to show that, that you've helped them so much just to guide them. And I mean, look, I do feel that, that we all have the ability to tap within, but it's always nice to get someone to clean the house for you sometimes rather than do it by yourself.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think it's helpful because sometimes when we're not in the best place, we can't see the wood for the trees sometimes, and it's always been very helpful for me when I've needed it as well. But we do have the free will to change as well. What you're going to tell someone isn't 100% true, even though a lot of the stuff that you predicted recently has been absolutely true, right?
Yes.
But as well on top of that,
I actually can't say that it was, because I haven't looked at the show that I made those predictions on. But some
I'm
people
telling you,
have said that they're pretty good.
It's really good.
It was pretty good. Yeah, it got a lot of views.
Yeah,
it got a lot of views.
Yeah, it did. And I think that comes down to
I'm so privileged, Kevin. It's such a privilege to be at this time in my life doing what I'm doing at the level that I'm doing.
Well,
what a privilege.
Look how much it's changed. I mean, Christ, to do these shows, to have this audience that you don't need mainstream media for, that you've self-generated an audience where it's just that niche, you've niched down into what you're doing. And, for any future people or mediums or psychics getting into this work, obviously, you're a sort of, guide to them and a coach to how to do this.
How do you think doing readings on the telephone began? Or more, as well as how did it happen that people started doing phone-in radio shows and doing psychic readings? Well, I was in my 20s, living at this Fleabag hotel and doing readings for people, street people and things like that, and working at the hotel excuse me, in exchange for room and board and doing psychic readings. And I looked around this place and I thought, this is not what I have in mind for me. And I started thinking about how, now we're talking about mid 1970s, late 1970s, and 77, 78, something like that. Nope, it was sooner. It was mid 1970s. So I was thinking, how can I get more people? And I thought, if I can do a reading for somebody in person, maybe I can do a reading for somebody on the telephone. Maybe I could. So at the hotel, and it was an old-fashioned hotel, and I'd pick the phone up and I'd tell the desk clerk, call my friends, and I'd call friends, and I would practice doing psychic readings on the telephone. And then after I started doing it for a while, I asked my friends if they would give me the phone numbers of other friends so that they would know that I was going to call. And I would call them and practice doing readings on the phone. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then I just started spread the word, tell everybody, if you want a psychic reading on the phone, just call me. And I'd get a phone call at 3:00 in the morning, hello, hi, this is Joe. What can you tell me? And I'd just like wake up and just start doing stuff. And then one day I said, how are you going to get paid? Oh, so then I thought, I wonder if I can do readings on the telephone. Can I do readings on the radio? And I phoned this little small radio station north of Toronto, and the program director, morning man, talk show host was a guy named Rusty Draper. And I said to him, my name is Robert Lindsey Milne. This is what I can do in your radio show. And he said, if you can do what you say, you're on my show tomorrow morning at 10 after 9. And if you can't do what you say, you're off my show at 20 after 9. Other than that, come on up. So Aurelia is 100 miles north of Toronto, or 120, 130 kilometers. I didn't have any money. I had to be there the next day, and the show was being broadcast from the restaurant at the Howard Johnson's. They were promoting to get customers to come in and see the radio show. And nobody was there, so I didn't have any money. And so that day, that late afternoon, I hitchhiked up to Aurelia, and I slept in the park. And I swam in Lake Couchiching for my bath and my shower for the next day. And I had some other clothes I put with me, and I went to the Howard Johnson's, and I went to the restaurant, and they weren't going to actually let me in. I must have looked pretty rough. And I said I was with the station, and I met Rusty, and there was nobody in the building, but we were broadcasting on the air. And I started doing some things, and Rusty asked me a couple of questions, and I said something, and he got like really freaked out. And then people started coming to the hotel, and then the room filled up, and then I was only supposed to be on for an hour, and at like 10 minutes to, or a quarter to 10, Rusty said, can you stay another hour? And I said, sure. And then there was a big lineup down the hall because no one had ever done that before. This was the first time. It was my first time. Like, I was just, holy fuck, I'm doing this. It was so anyway, another hour goes by, and he says, can you stay till noon? And I said, well, yeah, sure. And like at about 20 to 12, I just looked at him and said, I have to stop now. Because, like it was, but they had filled the room. People were coming up to the microphone and stuff like that. And it was live, was on the air. And they filled the room, emptied the room, and filled it again. And then when the show was over, people just jumped and surrounded me and inundated me, and they're just throwing all kinds of questions. And Rusty and the hotel owner grabbed me by one arm, and Rusty grabbed me by the other, and they pulled me away down the hall in the office. And the guy said to me, can you stay over and do the show tomorrow? And I said, well, no, I can't. I have to tell you, I slept in the park last night, haven't eaten since yesterday, and I'm tired and I'm hungry and I just want to go home. And the guy that said about that owned the hotel, he said, "You can stay here tonight. You can have anything you want. You can have anything you want. Just please be on the show tomorrow." And then Rusty said to me, I was getting $5 a reading then. And Rusty said to me, "Do you do readings for people?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And he said, we could get one of the girls from the hotel or from the radio station to book appointments. And the guy that owned the hotel, he said, "You can stay here for as long as you want. There's no charge. You can have anything you want." And I said, "Okay." And then Rusty said, "How much do you charge for a reading?" And I said, $25. And Rusty said, "You'll never get that here." And I said, "Okay, I don't care." Because I assure you, that hotel was a whole lot better than Larry's Hideaway Hotel. And the food, everything was better. So I didn't care if I never got a reading. Anyway, the same thing happened the next day. And they booked 126 readings at $25 a reading. And I stayed there for 10 days. And when I came home back to Larry's Hideaway, I went to the store and got a newspaper, and I looked around for rented apartments. And I took a cab and I found a nice rented apartment, and I paid 6 months rent in advance. And I went back to Larry's Hideaway and put all my stuff in the cab that I could. Everything else got left behind. And I didn't go back to Larry's Hideaway for maybe about 10 years. And that's how I got out of and started doing shows.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry I got carried away with you, Kevin, but I just have never actually told that story on the air.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So
You
let's
could have
just
interrupted, though.
let's get down to where this is all coming from, and what has been your quest, if there's been any, on the nature of reality, or what you think any of this is. Right. So first of all, where is this coming from? I mean, where? So how's it? So you just, as you've explained there, you when you do a reading, you're just seeing, like, it's almost like a download. It's almost like you're bringing through this information through this part of you that's opened up, in a sense. I mean, these are my words, not yours, right? I've done a lot of interviews on channeling. I'm trying not to use those words in this. I think I do though think some of the best channelers, like the channel material for Seth, right? When you look at that material, that stood the test of time, and you look at Jane Roberts, who was a great medium as well, that I do feel that she understood that actually all this was channeled. All the psychic stuff, all the medium stuff, it was all channeled. And I think because she channeled Seth, I think it allowed her to become that greater medium. But that's just my take on it, for what I understand on it.
And
right?
Maybe that's true. I knew a guy. His name was Michael Blake Reed, and I met Michael when the entities that were started speaking through him, and we met pretty much at the same time, where I was starting my rise too, and there's about 12,000 hours of recordings of Michael in a session, and he was a channeler, and he was brilliant, or the entities that spoke through him, that were called the Evergreens, were brilliant and had a big influence on how I developed and grew spiritually and psychically. Okay, how I grew psychically. I grew spiritually my way, and I was using that word spiritual in terms of values, morals, ethics, things like that. That's when I was using that word spiritually. And so I understand when I do a reading, sometimes I don't know what I'm going to say next. I just say it. Sometimes I'm very clear on what's going through. When I have taught classes and people to be psychic, and I can show just about anybody how to be psychic, and I can do it really quickly. I can spend a day with a group of people that don't know each other, and in that one day, I can get them doing psychic readings without using a medium, psychic readings for strangers, and it doesn't take very long. So, what I ask people to do is become aware of what's obvious. So become aware of what's obvious. If you're going to do a psychic reading for somebody, just look at them. Just look at the person that they are. When you become aware of what's obvious, then more becomes obvious. And then when you become aware of what's more obvious, then more becomes obvious again. And eventually, as your mind expands to what appears obvious to you, it's not obvious to others. So it's a process of expanding your mind, becoming aware. So the example also I would use is when I was doing those phone-in shows, I would ask people to call in, tell me your first name, where you're calling from, write your question down, but don't ask it. So, hi, my name is Joe from, wherever. Kalamazoo. So anyway, I'd say, thanks a lot, Joe. And then I would just start talking, and I'd say, oh, by the way, did you blow your right tire out last night? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was on my truck, and I would do stuff like that. Or somebody call up, one lady calls up and I say, wow, there's somebody here that's got a terrible migraine. Who is that? She said, oh, it's me. Okay. So I would just sense those things. When I was doing those things, the conscious part of my brain was listening and saying, this is so bloody obvious, Robert. You're going to get caught. This is so bloody simple. People out there are just going to say, boy, this guy's just faking it. And when I listened to the air chat, I can remember what I was thinking at the time I was saying what I was saying, but I'm hearing it from a different perspective. And I realize it is not so obvious at all. So we open our minds and we get to the point where things are obvious. And that's how I see it.
I like the way you're describing it there. It's a very different way of describing it, but it's the way it's worked for you, and it's the way and it will help other people who are maybe that want to tap into that, this ability. And
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And But okay, so what about the nature of do you ever ask yourself what the bloody hell is all this? Other people are talking about that are mediums or psychics say, well, I've got guides, I've got this, and we're not using that we're I don't think you're going to say that for what you're doing. What do you question any of why am I here? What is the nature of reality? What's life like when you cross over, when you die? Because some people must ask you these questions. Where's my loved one gone? And you're gonna. Do you get those questions from people? Is Darren okay? He's passed on. Is he okay?
When I'm doing a reading, and when I'm just being a regular person, if that's possible, I think differently and I see things differently. When I'm doing a reading, my acceptance is so broad. It astonishes me when I'm not doing readings. So I'm in a different state. Years and years and years ago, or early in my career, there was a man in Canada. His name was Alan Spraggett, and he wrote the book The Unexplained, and he was a very good astrologer, but he was a broadcaster, and he had a TV show called The Unexplained, and he was interesting. I met him, and I was in my very, very early 30s, and he was talking about this British psychic, and I had said something derogatory about him. And Alan said, you know what? You psychics believe in what you do, but you think everybody else is full of crap. And I thought, he's right. And then I realized just then, that what this person does is different than what I do, in the way we do it. But we have the same purpose. And the same purpose, I really believe this, is to give service. And I believe that almost everybody that does this job is in it for doing and giving service. There are some frauds, very small amount though.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be some people that maybe watch this out just out of curiosity, that think, that would always and never may change their mind on that. It's just a complete con, that none of this is true.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
But they're not the people that you're working with. And
I don't care whether someone believes or not. Okay. Here's my attitude about that. Trying to convince somebody to believe in psychics or spirits or whatever is like trying to describe the color purple to somebody who has been born blind. You're just not going to be able to do it.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Right.
Do you fear death?
No, I don't. So I thought about it. I often think about it. I'm 73. Most of my life has been lived. If I died right now, well, I'd wait till the show's over.
Sure, thank you.
I do a good out, do it out,
yeah.
right? I do a good, but if right after that, boom, I would go out and say, wow, what a great ride. But I don't want to do that yet, because I got a whole lot of other things that I still want to do. So I don't seek it. It's going to happen. But I'm not afraid of it. I've noticed that people that are afraid of dying, and the more afraid they are of dying, are the less satisfied with what they've done in their life. Okay. And that's usually what causes the fear.
It's never too late though to turn it around, is it?
It's never too late. It's never too late. I've got another poster that says it's never too late to be what you might have been.
I love that.
Do you like that one?
I like that one. Yeah, that's good.
Like for example, I have very few regrets. Well, there's been a couple. One of the regrets is I didn't start being a dog trainer, dog handler until late in life. I was in my late 50s. And my regret is I didn't start it earlier, because I could have been a good dog handler, but at late 50s, my body just didn't have the agility that I had when I was 40, and I would have been a good dog handler. It would have been fine. So that's a regret.
That's not too bad. I don't think that's too bad.
No, I suppose.
What do you think about the nature of why we're here?
Oh, to experience. That's it. So to experience all things on all levels. And we have free choice and free will to experience anything we want. However, there's a rule with that. We have free choice and free will to do anything we want. The rule is what we do one way, we must do equally the opposite. Okay, so the purpose of experience is we need to see things from both sides. And of course, on this planet, we can do anything we want, but we do have accountability too. There is accountability on this planet.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, of course. Even on this planet. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I also believe, I have my own podcast now, and this time last year was just about to be released, or the first edition. And if somebody would have told me, and it was 2 years ago, I was first on your show. If somebody would have told me back then that I'd be doing my own podcast, I'd be doing what I'm doing. It was, come on, give you, and on the very first show, that I did. It was with a couple of religious guys. I trusted Michelle, and that it was a really fascinating show, religious as in Christian, and I came to understand the concept of hating the sin and loving the sinner. I came to an awareness and acceptance of, because I would think, how could you love a person like Jeffrey Dahmer? Like he killed his boyfriends and ate them, so like how could you? And Mr. Dahmer, by the way, his father had a big influence on me too. I saw him being interviewed after his son was murdered in prison, and he said, that he never understood. The interviewer said, you showed up in court and sat behind your son every day. You were with him, and you visited him regularly at the prison. How could you do that when he's done these things? And Mr. Dahmer said, I'm appalled by what he did. I have racked my brains trying to figure out what could have ever caused that. And I don't know. But what I do know is he's my son. And I love my son. And he visited him right up until he was murdered. And I thought, wow, that's unconditional love. So then I started thinking, then I met the Christian guys. Then I started thinking, where the purpose of life is to experience all things on all levels. It's impossible to experience all things on all levels in one existence. You can't do it.
Yes.
You can't do it,
No,
right? Can't
right.
be done.
Yeah.
So therefore, there must be like a reincarnation or multiple existences. So then I started thinking about all the things I'd learned over my lifetime, and I put this kind of thought together. So imagine a group of souls, spirits, entities traveling together, reincarnating all together in playing different roles, very much like a traveling actors ensemble. And while the actors are on the train or on the bus or the plane, and they're all traveling together, they are who they are. And then when they get to the town or city or wherever they're putting on their show, they put on a costume and makeup. That's right. And they also take on an identity, and they experience that identity. And when the show is, and they can do vicious things to each other on the stage, and fucking awful shit. And when the show is over, and they go back to the train or the bus or the plane or whatever, they take off their clothes, their costumes and the paint, and then they're back to who they are again. And that's kind of like how I see reincarnation. So then when I heard, Jesus said, hate the sin, love the sinner, I understood how it can be done.
Right, and that's an important message actually with your work. But is there any other important messages? Because you must have had look, you get so many people to come see you with different issues. Is there obviously that's a core thing throughout as well. What is another sort of core message would you say to the audience with some of the issues that people come to?
When I do readings for people, as I said earlier, I often see their life from conception to completion. And the way I give bad news, and it is a moral obligation to give bad news. Well, if you see it, you don't make the shit up, right? But it's more. I'm sorry.
No, this is great. I love it. Yeah, keep going.
All right. So it's a moral obligation to, if you see something bad, to tell them. Because if it can be seen, it can be changed. Destiny cannot be changed.
And which is like, for example, the client that came to you. I think we discussed this before. The client that came to you, where you got to see, she got to bicycle to you, see this great life that she was going to live, and then sometime on the news, maybe a couple of days later, you'll tell us she'd
The next day.
the next day she'd had an accident leaving you, crossed over. So, and this was a big lesson for you, because potentially she had on that bike. She didn't have to have that accident, did she? You know,
No.
you saw her life without the accident, obviously. But
I didn't see it at all. Totally missed it.
well, the accident you did, but that's your point back there, isn't it? That you know what, there's some things that are destined that
cannot be
be seen.
That's right. However, if it can be seen, it can be changed. And another way to say it is forewarned is forearmed. But it's the forewarned and how you do it. So when I have bad news for somebody, what I do is I look forward in time to when all the stuff is finished, over, and dealt with. And I talk about the really positive things that are happening to that person because of what they're going to go through. But I don't tell them what they're going to go through. I just tell them about the good time it'll be. Then I come back to the present and I just drop a little hint. Then I talk about something different. And then I talk about the good thing. Then I come back and give them a bigger hint. And I sometimes I'll take like 30, 35, even 40 minutes to get to the point where they know the disaster's coming or the big heavy duty. But usually they're already
empowered,
accepting it.
Yeah,
absolutely,
to get past
because
that.
they know what's going to happen.
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
And then when I see people when I'm doing a reading that it's in the middle of a crisis.
Oh, that's always difficult. Yeah.
What I do is I look, let's say I'm doing a reading for somebody who's 40 years old or 35, whatever. Okay, what I do is I'll move forward in time. I thought everybody could do this. I would move forward in time, look back, say they're 35, so I'll look back at when they're 75. I'll look back through their eyes and I'll describe to them at 35 or at 40 how they feel about the way they solved the problem when they're 80 or 75. And I describe to them how they feel when they're old about the way they dealt with this problem and the outcome. I tell them the truth, of course. And what I'm telling them is they get through it.
Well, what you're also telling them as well is that, you know, this place, this energy that you're going to be at, to have these feelings, to be able to get to this person.
Absolutely,
you can be it now, but
absolutely,
it's still
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm showing them is when they're old, reflecting on their life, this is how they're going to feel the way they solved the problem. Like I'm talking about stories now. Okay, so what I'm telling them is how good they feel about the way they're solving this major life crisis they're in, and that's where I see where a lot of my healing work comes in. I'm really focused on healing, you know, helping people with trauma, coming to terms with that, seeing things that have happened to people and helping them see it and express it and touch it.
That's so interesting. Yes, because some of this work is on your website as well. Just remind us of your website one more time. It is
robertlindsey.com or www.
Thank you. Wow. Yeah.
Now, I thought that's what everybody did. I never realized that other people, like anyone I've told this to, no one has done it, like the way I see things and the way I give the information. And it's just words that come into my mind. Now, I am very often in my life, I am in situations where people's life are in danger, and I participate in helping them. And it happens quite often. Where I've intervened and someone, if I hadn't, of the person would have died.
Yeah. Including missing people. as well, and
and dead people.
dead people with murder cases, or a murder case as well. I know there's been.
And
Yep.
also, I helped as a psychic um, with the book with the man that was dying of an incurable disease, and I participated as a psychic and helped save his life. I wasn't the star of the show, but as a psychic, if a psychic hadn't have been involved, the man would have died.
I think you discussed that on my last
Yeah.
interview with you, and I'll put that in the
Yeah.
link below, that particular
Please.
story. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So if I was to say to you, okay, tune into me then, right? Because I think we've got some connection between us, and I think I'm allowing myself right now to be as open as I can be, right? And this will just be a brief kind of example, just to show people, right, what's possible.
Why don't you just get me to do predictions? If you would like a reading from me, I'll be glad to do one. But the depth with which I see things is not appropriate for us to talk about.
With myself, you mean?
Yes,
Do I care
I'm
enough?
really,
Yeah.
I'm really uncomfortable doing that.
Okay.
So we started off with, I'm not doing predictions. And then you convinced me, like, I don't know, maybe you should sell ice cream to, Inuit. You're really good.
Well, thank you.
Convinced me to do predictions that are
Thank
coming
you.
up, right?
Yeah.
We went, this was like a wrestling match with what's that Rocky movie where you see the great big Russian guy? It was like having an arm wrestling
My
match with that
parents
guy.
always told me I should have been a salesperson. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
they always say that. They're like, oh God. Yeah. That's interesting that even with me though, with me personally, you feel there's some things that you don't want to say. How many years am I serving in the future then? Is it a long?
How old are you today?
I'm
See, you don't
I'm
even want to do
pausing
that.
there. No.
Right.
No, it's not. It's no. 44. I've had my birthday recently.
So
I'm 44.
you're 2 years away from the midpoint of your life.
I guess so.
Okay, you are 2 years away from the actual mid time of your existence. So meaning that in 2 years from now you'll be 46, and at the completion of your life you're going to be in your most likely early 90s. In spite of respiratory issues, in spite of certain bowel or issues like that, it is also worthwhile to be careful that you don't hurt. It's be your right leg, right knee. You might be prone to injuries or trips and falls or bangs. That can be in the future. This is not a good time in your life to take up skiing. Or things that, or even skating, or things that would require your knees to hold the weight, or to you can easily hurt that. That would be the most serious part. At the ending of your existence, by the way, there's 18 documents that's recorded. 44. At 46, there is a new connection in either a new bond reconnection in a strong relationship, or there's a new relationship within the next 2 years that also is a deeply bonding one. From about age 37, 38, so and up 39 and up until now. So when you're an old man looking back on your life, you'll describe from about 38 or 39 to about 45, 44 as one of the most emotionally confusing eras of an emotionally confused life. So you'll be describing the cycle that you're just completing now as the most emotionally difficult, confusing, and internally confused or messed up. I'm being soft with this. You'll be understanding why your guts are often in a knot. Whatever happened when you were 3, 4, and 5 years old, in the environment around you, you learned that's when the knots started occurring. Incidentally, 2.5, 3, 4, 5 years old. That was actually the beginning. So you are now at the peak, and just over the crest, as it were, of the most difficult or stressful, emotionally turbulent time. Right now, today, compared to, say, this time next year, every aspect of your life, including your background, is going to be different. Now, I just have to point out that we had a brief discussion about you saying you're thinking of making it another color before that. So we had that short discussion. So I just wanted to say to you, but even I was being funny. I was just cracking a joke. Okay. So even the background is going to be different. So where you live, where you work, what you do, people that you're around, economic state. As you are around the 18th of September, whatever legal matters, paperwork, documents, and things to have to deal with, all of a sudden, kind of like dominoes getting pressed, all of a sudden, that paperwork that you've been so desperately developing and pining isn't a powerful enough word. But certainly looking forward to. So I can't remember when I just said. I think I said by September 18th, the documents will be in place, or the paperwork will be in place, and you're going to be knowing how settled or secure you are. No, I'm sorry, Kevin. I just got a bit confused with the timing on that. That might be too soon, but you'll know by the 18th that things are going to be falling into place. This time next year, for sure, all those that paperwork will be in place. For whatever reason, where you're broadcasting from today appears to be a different one, a different location, let's say, than even in January, and it could be sooner than that. So by January of 2023, the probability of you having another place that you'll be living, and one of the things that'll be extra special about the place is the lack of stress in the environment. Because the stress that's in your environment is like a volcano. Yeah. And it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. So the next thing is that at this time in your life, you have experienced every kind of problem, not every specific problem, but every kind of problem that's in your destiny to experience. And since around mid-20s and up until now, virtually all of the issues that you have experienced have either been repeats or variations of similar themes. Different details, same concept. From this day until the ending of your life, whether it be at 93, 103, 113, you will never again experience a new kind of problem. It will be a repeat or variation of what you've already experienced. And when you're going through those PTSD episodes, when you're ruminating, man, boy, one of the disadvantages of being really smart is when your mind just kind of takes over and goes, runs rampant. Oh, wow. Because boy, you can come up with so much. That's one of the disadvantages of being really, really smart. Because your brain is well exercised, and when it goes crazy and spinning out, the endurance is very impressive. So when you go through these types of ruminations, from the time you were young and up until now, there is one thing that every single rumination has in common, one common denominator. Every single time, every single one that you've ever had, there's one common denominator, and that common denominator is it always ends. Always. Because, man, if you didn't, the top of your head would have been blown up by now. So when you're in that mode, when your guts are in a knot, when your head is going around and around and around, and the thoughts are coming in, and changing from minute to minute, and they're not necessarily pleasant ones, okay. So when that's happening to you, just say to yourself, hey, I'm crazy now, no reactions. That's the other one. I'm crazy right now, no reactions, just until I get calm. And I will be. But when we're in that state, our unconscious, our primal brain is taken over, and our primal brain doesn't think, doesn't feel, has no emotion, one thing: survival, no processing whatsoever. So when you're like that, you actually can't think, you can't process, and one of the things that you can't see is the future. So when you're going through that process, and what I've just shown you, when you're going through this process, one of the things is that it always ends. It always ends. And when you say that, when you know something is going to happen, you can decide when it'll happen. So when you find yourself doing those ruminations, you say, hey, this is going to end. Now, that is the magic word, but it's not like a lightning bolt. Boom! I'm sane again. And you have to work at it. But who knows? When you practice at it a lot, you can get zapped by the lightning bolt. But you work up to it. As soon as you recognize that you have it, that is happening, you say, "Oh, this will be finished in 5 days from now." Okay, this is good. Oh, but wait a minute. Oh, this can be done in 4 days. Right. Well, wait a minute. If it's going to be done in 4 days, could it be done in 3? So now what's happening is you're starting to think. So when you know something is going to happen, and you know that it always will happen, you can determine when. And it's a mind thing. And the only time that you can learn it is when your mind is open and processing, which is you've been now.
Well, thank you.
All right, so see, this is one of the reasons why I didn't want to get into doing a reading for you, Kevin.
It's okay. Don't worry. No. I don't mind sharing it. It's yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't deny it's been like that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We always have interesting conversations.
We do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And I know there's things you're holding back on there as well, which is fine. But it's funny what you've said there, because, well, it's not. I don't mean it's funny, but I mean it's just.
I understand. I know where you're coming from.
Because what you're saying there is that what you're setting up here is something that's going to be set up for something, some long term thing, and that's what
absolutely.
Which is what I'm going to just twist this into right now a little bit as well. And thank you for the relationship bit, because that does mean a lot to me. That does, because
there is one other thing.
Yeah.
There is one other thing that I would like to include with this.
Of course, please.
Is that when you find yourself under a lot of stress, when you're in that rumination, here's what I suggest. And it can only take a couple of minutes if you want. So when you get like that, when you're going through, visualize very quickly, right in your solar plexus, a speck of dazzling pure white light. just right in your solar plexus. Every time you inhale, it gets bigger. Every time you exhale, it gets purer. After a little few inhales and exhales getting bigger and purer, it starts to fill your body cavity. And as you inhale, it gets bigger, and exhale, it gets purer. And pretty soon, it starts to come out of your body. And then you inhale, it gets bigger, exhale, it gets purer, until eventually, from it, this dazzling pure white light that is encapsulated inside of you, becomes a dazzling pure white sparkling ball that you are encapsulated in it. And that energy, well, first of all, that white light will release or clean out any negative energy or vibes inside. And as it's coming out of your body, it'll be clearing energies that would be in your aura. You could expand that to fill the room that you were in. If you really get powerful at it, you could expand it to the building. I don't know if you could go much farther than that in protecting the building. And, that might be in the gold medal round.
You've just told me what I need to hear there, just for this particular, thing that we're doing right now for this show, right? Yeah. I miss the relationship side of being with someone. I do. That's been not that I'm okay about being on my own. It's not about that. It's just there's things I think I've realized what I want and what I don't want, if that makes sense. And
that's really important.
Yeah, and I think of course I want to share a life with someone. Of course I do, but I'll know when it's right.
When there's a piece of paper that's called green, but it's not actually green, but it'll make you feel green. That's just that was part of the within the year thing.
Right. Yes. I attracted to me. Yeah. The right one. Okay.
Yes.
So let's just move this. Let's just turn this around, right? To the times that we live in now, because this is another thing for people as well, right?
Yep.
Look, we're going through some major changes, right? And that's partly what my work is for maybe a future news network, right? To look at the deeper spiritual meaning behind why things are the way they are, right? When they happen, okay? If you were just to look at 2023,
sure,
what do you see?
Or from now, 2022 till the end of 2023, if that's okay, or farther. But just one thing. What you saw me do when I was tuning into you is what I do. And what I do is looking at the person in front of me. And my instinct is, what can I do rather than what can I get? That's my instinct. The other instinct is I can't solve world hunger. I can't stop the war and the atrocities in Ukraine. I can't do that. I can feed the hungry person in front of me. I can look after the person that's brokenhearted, ripped apart. I can help them. And that's what been my specialty in my life. And that's what I'm drawn to. So, going on world scale, I'm not as smart enough to understand what's going on. I'm pretty good at helping the person in front of me.
Then before
I'm going to talk about the future, though.
Keep tuned in. I just want to add this to because what you just said there is really important, right? But I just want to add this, that actually, we're going to get onto the world scale right now, but actually, healing ourselves, going into purpose, being the best version of ourselves, actually rubs off to everyone else around us, and that is about changing the world. You want to change the world? Sure. Of course you can't. As you say, you can't change what's going on in the Ukraine or any other future conflicts.
That's right.
But you know what?
That's right.
We can change ourselves.
That's correct. And you can help the person in front of you.
Right. That's my point, which is the point you're making. Right. Yeah.
Well, that's right. And I lead my life like that. And which is one of the reasons I'm constantly coming across people whose lives in danger, or they're sick, or
do you want to know
they're laying on the street.
That was the most important message that came through the channelers, all 100 and something of them. Honestly, regardless what's going on right now in the world, change yourself. It ripples to everyone
That's
around
right.
you, and it changes
That's
the
right.
world in
That's right.
ways you can't
That's right.
understand.
That's right.
So yeah.
And not even, yeah, that's correct. You just don't know. Anyway, um, so Mr. Biden, President Biden, will not be running for president for his second term. He will not resign. He will not. He will finish his term and finish his term with dignity. Mrs. Harris, the vice president, will not win. She might not even run for the nomination, but if she does, she would not win. Mr. Trump, former president, as the news all is in pretty serious difficulty. They are starting to build and build and build. The probability of Mr. Trump being incarcerated is about 1%. That's not going to happen. However, there are some very serious issues going to be happening. I am not a political person. I don't have an opinion about what America should be. I'm thankful for America, America keeps Canada safe. I'm very, very grateful. And I want America to be great and happy. America is great. I want Americans to be happy. When Mr. Trump gets into all kinds of trouble, when it really gets up, which is going to be happening between now and October and November, then the Republicans all of a sudden are going to get fractioned, and they may be, circling in the wagons and shooting inward. The Democrats will have a very challenging nomination run. And it would be a much younger person that would get that nomination, a younger one with Republicans as well. Ask me in 6 months or a year who wins that election. What's going on in the Ukraine is going to continue well into a year, from the first battle, like the first bomb that dropped to when it stops, can go up to as much as a year. Mr. Putin will most likely not be in office this time next year. Blowing a gasket might be a way to explain what happened to him. Anyway, what also has happened is something very similar to when the Berlin Wall was knocked down. And what's happened here is the Russian army, here's another way to say it. The Russian nuclear weapons are as sophisticated as the way their army has been fighting this fight. And it's been fake from day one, which also what happened when the Berlin Wall came down. Okay. And the exact same thing is happening now. So it looks like, again, Russia's going to be imploding. That's what it looks like. And it's a tragedy. It's horrible. It's just awful. I don't know exactly. Mr. Putin's life doesn't seem to be particularly long. It may be because of an illness. It might be because of something happens to his brain or whatever. So that's what. So the next thing is that let's say. Just give me a second here. I just wanted to make a switch. In 2 years from now, 3 years from now, we have a different prime minister too. The next election in Great Britain will be bringing in a new party so I believe the conservatives now are in power, and the guy in France, whatever his name is, in the next election, he's also going to be gone. And then in Germany, the guy in Germany, or if it's a guy or the leader in there. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of leaders resigning, losing their job, getting toppled, stuff like that. And then there's China. And when the issues, and they will be supporting Russia, incidentally, and sending money to Russia. When Russia, comes apart, and it will, the rest of the world will then turn and focus on China. And the way things are done, where there's so much manufacturing done overseas, places like the United States, Canada, the developed world, will start making their own stuff more and more and more, become more and more independent. We are going to have a turbulent time in the world until 2026. By about 2026, we'll be over the stuff that we've gone through from 2018, and I deliberately said 2018, all the way up to 2026. So I guess that's going to be what, I'm so bad with that's what, 8 years from now. Okay, all right. So 8 years in total, right? So that's all going to come to a head, and by about, I think, 2026, we'll be over all that stuff and functioning again, similar to but better than we were pre-pandemic. There will be a very strong but small contingent of anti-vaxxers expressing their individuality. However, most it would be a social. The next thing is there will be as we're getting into the fall, Americans, in spite of some violence that's been in the country for a couple of hundred years, are going to be softer and gentler on, it's like the whole country wakes up with a big hangover and they look in the mirror and they got their face all punched in. Not that I've ever experienced such a thing, from being in a barroom fight or something, right? Okay, so it's like the country wakes up with this hangover, all beat to shit, and then this is, what are we doing? And it's not necessarily one great big lorazepam that everybody gets a zap of, but it starts off with, what have we been doing to each other? And it's that concept, and it starts to spread. That's what makes America great. And it will heal.
Well, yeah. It's the choice, isn't it? War or peace.
That's right. Although, so a lot of things will be happening. Like, for example, there's not going to be as many American warships around the world. The other countries will be doing it, or things like that, only because they just say, no, we don't want to fight anymore. We don't need to do that. I think that's one of those things. Now, it doesn't happen in September, but it's the process that's coming into, this takes a little bit of time. In our lifetime, you'll never see a ban on guns. This is not going to happen. Certainly not in our lifetime. I don't think there's anybody on the planet right now that's alive that would happen in their lifetime. That could be an exaggeration. So anyway, that's some of the things that I've experienced, had come into my mind. just then. Yeah, I didn't think. Well, we got into kind of like an arm wrestle about not doing it.
I know. And then
I was trying to get out of the interview. Like, fuck this, man.
You've got all the way up to 2026 there. So, yeah. Thank you so much for that. That was very, very, very interesting. What was just slowly coming. Well, I mean, things were overlapping, and that's very, and maybe with Donald Trump as well. I mean, maybe with what he's going through, maybe there's health issues coming up as well.
Oh, there are.
Yeah. I don't know how
he's not going to prison.
How he couldn't have health issues with the amount of stress that he's under.
It's
mental.
It's the mental stress, and the beginning of dementia, Alzheimer's.
Well, I'm not surprised with that sort of, yeah.
One of the reasons I don't like doing these like world predictions is I'm violating somebody's privacy, and for me it's kind of obscene.
I think that nothing would have come through there that wouldn't have been helpful to anyone for whatever reason they're viewing it, whether it's for curiosity or whether it's some other part of them as well.
Sure.
I don't think you would. I don't think it would be allowed in, and I don't think you would let it out neither. So I rest assured that. Yeah.
So what I'm like, I think there was a difference in my demeanor and how I was giving information when I started to do that psychic reading for you. I changed, but I was still very clear. I was still very in control. I knew what I was doing, and I wasn't hearing voices or anything like that.
No.
Yeah, I was just saying what was coming in.
Oh, well, it's a different process for everyone. Absolutely, it is.
That's correct.
Yeah. That was fascinating, and I really
Thank
do.
you.
I mean, what you've done there is you've shared yourself, and as you always do, and it's it allows people to see how it's working and to influence them for whatever reason they're watching this. And I can only say thank you for doing it. If there's any final message you want to give, and it's not related to anything,
At the end of every podcast, and my saying that is, it's do good, stay safe, and above all, just be kind.
Well, Robert, what more can we say than that? Do you know what I mean? That's so important, those things. Yeah. And that's to others and yourself as well.
Absolutely. Be kind.
Yeah.
Do good.
Right. Well,
thank you.
Just your website one last time, Robert.
Yes, you can find me at robertlindsey.com. You can also find me on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, YouTube, and pretty much wherever you can find your podcasts. And you can find, did I say Facebook and Instagram? You can also find me too there personally.
We're going to link those all in the link below in the description for the video as well. So if you get, one of those platforms that you want to reach out on, you can do, and you're available as well through your website. So I just want to say, I really do appreciate having you on, and I know it was a big ask as well, because for me it's a different type of format as well, completely different to what I've done before. But thank you.
It was a pleasure. I had fun.
Me too.